Hi class, week 3 discussion here, talking a lot about communications. So some techniques and methods to communicate effectively as a project manager is something that you're going to use throughout your entire career, and it's essential to making sure that everything goes successfully, smoothly, and everyone's in the same boat and understanding. That's going to be done with written communication and documentation. Written documentation is the most direct and clear way to make sure that the task is valid and understood by everyone. Oral communication goes hand in hand with that. Those face-to-face meetings or the digital meetings that we all do weekly to make sure that everyone's understanding and on the same page with where they're at with their tasks. Visual and nonverbal, it could be the actual document or paper that you're working off of. It could be a WBS. It could even be a model that's, a tangible model that is the end goal that everyone's working to get to. Active listening, we talk about project managers and speaking and understanding, but if you're not active listening, you're not receiving the message back from your teammates or anyone else who's involved. And then feedback. Feedback can be as simple as recapping what was talked about, recapping and making sure everyone understands the discussion, if there's any questions or concerns, and moving forward. So with that, there's a lot of do's and don'ts, which can be easily mixed up. So some of the do's are have a plan. If you're a project lead or you're the one speaking, come in with a plan and set those expectations for that plan. You are going to do X, Y, and Z. You're doing A, B, and C. There's no misunderstanding. And that also means you're clear and direct with what you're trying to project out. Know your audience. Don't talk to your audience like they're the stakeholders when they're your teammates. And then listen back to others. Kind of comes back to that feedback and the understanding what your team is wanting. So some of the don'ts, don't forget to listen. Don't forget to ask if anyone's questions or if anyone has any feedback or their questions or concerns. And don't assume everyone's good. You can't just be like, oh, everyone's good. Okay, great. And when bad news arises, you got to deal with it. Don't just brush it aside. And don't be overcritical. If someone says something, you don't need to nitpick every little detail. Some major components within the communication plan, you really need to make sure those objectives and goals are on point. And the audience, if you need to tailor different reports or different types of communication to your team versus your stakeholders, then you need to make sure you're knowing who you're speaking with. And then the outreach of the communication. How are we communicating? Is it email? Is it text message? Is it face-to-face meetings? Is it Zoom meetings? Making sure everyone's on the same page and then knowing when to use those secondary outreach points. And the frequency type, do we use the communication frequency of text messaging as needed? Do we use the frequency face-to-face meetings weekly? And what reports and types of communication are going to go along with that? So communication is 100% absolutely vital for project success, like 100%. It is super important because the plan ensures that all stakeholders are informed of the progress of the project, increase customer satisfaction. And if you don't have any of that, you're going to have a poor result and it's going to cause all sorts of problems, decrease in productivity, even the financial loss. This can be solved by having that strong plan. You need to make sure that that plan's in place, everyone's understanding of it, the communication is flowing smoothly, and that there's no problems. And while no one person is extremely important to the group, you don't want to title anyone that, but fundamentally the project manager is probably a key asset to making sure that the communication is flowing up to the stakeholders and the end users and then back down to the teammates as well. So they are definitely probably the center of the web for when it comes to communication. But overall, anyone who's speaking should be the most important person because they need to be heard and receptive. And then you as the listener will come in there secondary to make sure that you're receiving that message properly. Thanks everyone. I hope for some feedback and we'll see you next week.